Greetings, gamers! It's John of Video Games in the World. Welcome to the new series, World of Timelines. This is a series that focuses on the timelines of many of your favorite video game series and not so beloved ones as well. Today's episode is the timeline of Resident Evil, which won over The Legend of Zelda. Yay! The Resident Evil series has been around since 1996 and redefined the horror genre in video games by introducing the survival horror genre. Resident Evil is inspired by the stories of Sweet Home and the Living Dead series by the late George A. Romero, and has various horror movie references such as The Shining, The Crazies, and so many more. This series has 30 games, or 60 if you count pachinko and mobile games, but screw them anyway. This game also spawned novels, movies, comic books, and tons of merchandise as well. In this episode, we will explore the timeline of the series and each of their events, excluding the non-canon games. So before we begin, there will be spoilers, you've been warned. Pre-Resident Evil, Mother Miranda. Before Umbrella, Wolf Pharma, and Trisol existed, we must head back to the time of Mother Miranda. In the early 20th century, Mother Miranda is living a peaceful life with her daughter Eva in Eastern Europe. But then, in 1919, the Spanish flu pandemic whipped to her community and killed so many of her people, including her beloved daughter. The death of Eva sent Mother Miranda into a downward spiral and heads down into a cave beneath the village to find death and be with her daughter. But what she finds down there is a mold called the megamycete, a genus of fungus-like organism that assimilates the DNA of animals, allowing it to consume and replace its host, much like that alien from The Thing. This mold gifted her with regenerative abilities, and with its newfound power and knowledge, she sought to resurrect her daughter. Mother Miranda continues to experiment with the megamycete for decades and creates a parasite known as Kadu. In 1951, a young British student has stumbled upon her research after getting lost on a hiking expedition. This man turned out to be none other than the aristocrat and scheming scientist Oswell E. Spencer. Spencer became fascinated with Mother Miranda's research, which inspired him to create a virus that could extend human life but bring the world to the brink of annihilation. He found a symbol representing the sigil of the four houses as inspiration for a logo that resembles an umbrella, a logo that becomes a symbol of fear and global destruction in the years to come. The origin of Umbrella Inc. The 1960s, a time of great change with historical events such as civil rights marches, the moon landing, and the Beatles changing the way we lived. In 1962, Spencer has architect George Trevor design a mansion and research laboratory in Arklay Mountains in the Midwestern United States. When Trevor finishes his masterpiece of a mansion with evil secrets in 1967, Spencer invites the Trevor family to stay there, permanently. 1 year before that creepy mansion was complete, Spencer joined with fellow aristocrat Edward Ashford and Dr. James Marcus to find a rare mythical flower that could extend human life. Opportunity rose as Dr. Marcus developed a hypothesis about a mythical West African flower called Stairway of the Sun, had viral properties that bestowed powers through a viral mutagenic infection. The virus was called Progenitor. It was in the Kijuju region and used by the Indapaya tribe in rituals. If a young boy survived the viral properties of the flowers, then he will become the tribal chief. In a trip to the Indapaya tribal lands, the fabled flower was discovered in an underground garden and a virus discovered within it. However, flowers cultivated in the United States failed to replicate the virus. Requiring significant funding beyond their aristocratic links to bring about their eugenic stream, Spencer formed Umbrella Pharmaceuticals on behalf of Ashford and an indifferent Marcus and established a base in the Indapaya Garden so progenitor samples can be transported over the Atlantic instead. The Umbrella Corporation was seen by the public as a pharmaceutical company, but the company was used as a front for the creation of bioorganic weapons, better known as BOW or BOW, for military purposes. Requiring more money, the three agreed to a plan later known as the Tyrant Virus Project, where they would independently develop strains of progenitor to sell to the US military as a weapon. Edward Ashford would build an Umbrella research facility in the Antarctic, where the Code Veronica project would take place. While trying to experiment the progenitor virus onto himself, Edward Ashford died, although his death was believed to be masterminded by the power-hungry Spencer. Edward Ashford's death will be the beginning of the downfall of the once great reputation of the aristocratic family when his son Alexander succeeded him. Alexander Ashford became the new head of the Antarctic facility, but his rank was low due to not being a virologist, but a geneticist. Desperate to restore the glory of the Ashford family, Alexander would create twin children using the genes of the Ashford family matriarch, Veronica. These twins would be named Alfred and Alexia. Meanwhile, in the Arkley Mountains, Spencer took control of the Umbrella facilities and continued his research in the Trevor Mansion, while Dr. Marcus became the head of the newly built Umbrella training facility, which was used to train new interns and scientists. The Wesker Project. The Wesker Project, or Project W, was a eugenics project spearheaded by Spencer in the swinging 1960s, which intended to develop a race of superhumans as he believed that ordinary humans were decadent and corrupt. This project was named after the first director of the project, Dr. Wesker, and Spencer longed for a utopian world full of gifted intellectuals. This project has several hurdles to jump over. Firstly, when someone is injected with a progenitor virus, there will be a high chance that the host might die. Secondly, the Spencer Foundation had nowhere near the resources required to fulfill this project, leading to the founding of Umbrella Inc. as a means of raising funds and developing bioweapons as a means of testing the virus for Project W. Thirdly, the utopian vision could not be achieved if the candidates did not share Spencer's ideals. Project W solved this problem by selecting children as candidates who could be educated to have these ideals. In the first phase of the project, there were hundreds of children from around the world that were adopted legally or otherwise based on their biological parents' contributions to mankind. They were all given the surname Wesker and were given the best education that money can buy while being closely monitored by the Project W team. They all became Umbrella employees, and among these candidates were Albert and Alex Wesker. Alex was close to Spencer and was given knowledge about the project, but Albert was not given such knowledge. In 1998, there were 13 candidates who were considered the cream of the crop and determined to be the best subjects for the infection of the virus. 11 of the candidates died except Albert and Alex. Albert obtained superhuman powers, except Alex because of a degenerative disease at the time of infection. Albert will go on to develop the Ouroboros Project, while Alex will create the T-Phobos Project to cure her disease. The project was terminated in 2006 with the death of Spencer. Fall of the Ashford family. The Ashford family was once known as a well-respected aristocratic family dedicated to science that was started by its matriarch, Veronica. Her later successors were Stanley Ashford, Thomas Ashford, Arthur Ashford, and one of the founders of Umbrella, Edward Ashford. When Edward Ashford died in the middle of the virus project, his son Alexander would succeed him, but unfortunately, Alexander was not a virologist but a geneticist, which put him in the lower level office of Umbrella. This would greatly tarnish the reputation of the once proud Ashford family. Desperate to restore the glory of the Ashford family, Alexander will create twin children using the genes of the Ashford family matriarch, Veronica. The eggs were implanted inside of a woman who gave birth to a boy and a girl, who would happen to be Alfred and Alexia. While Alfred's intellect was higher than average, Alexia had a genius-level intellect. Alexia would graduate at the mere age of 10 from a prestigious university and was given position of head researcher at Umbrella, which proves that she was super smart. Alfred would later convince his sister Alexia, who he idolized, to lend him the jewel of her choker, and he somehow convinced his father to lend him the jewel of his earring. Using the jewel of his ring, Alfred discovered the truth about his and Alexia's birth when he entered a secret lab. Upon learning the truth, the twins grew to immensely hate their father. During the development of the T. Veronica virus, Alexia became very obsessed with it, which greatly concerned Alexander. Alexander will create a weapon known as the linear launcher to neutralize the host of the T. Veronica virus. She used the genes of a queen ant to create the virus, and she and her brother captured their father and experimented with the virus on him. It turned out that Alexander was a failure as a test subject, and he would turn into a monster that was called Nosferatu. Nope, not that Nosferatu. Alfred and Alexia sealed and tied him up inside of a dungeon. Alexia decided to perform the virus on herself, but it would take 15 years for her to bond with it. Alexia would put herself in a state of cryogenic sleep, leaving Alfred all alone. Alfred would run the illegal prison island known as Rockford Island. It was a prison island for those who betrayed the company and were used as guinea pigs, aka test subjects. Alfred's loneliness greatly affected his mental state and developed a dual personality. One personality was his own self, and the other was him pretending to be his beloved twin sister, Alexia. The betrayal and death of Dr. Marcus. In the groovy 1970s, James Marcus would conduct a research using a reliable supply of animal test subjects, which the Arklay training facility could store for a long-term study. Although they were many brilliant and talented researchers, Marcus thought they were inferior because their personalities were unfit for the company. However, all of these researchers, he would take 2 of them under his wing, making them his proteges. And these 2 will be none other than Dr. Albert Wesker and William Birkin. In 1977, Marcus made an achievement with the T virus by incorporating leech DNA into the virus, thus creating a strain of progenitor suitable for weapons research. In the subsequent months, he transitioned to animal experimentation involving a range of subjects from amphibians to reptiles to mammals. While he maintained his fascination with studying the virus effects on leeches, there was an increasing interest in advancing to human experimentation. Most test subjects were children, and those that were infected ended up discarded. Anyone infected with the virus becomes a walking corpse with a hunger for warm flesh and blood. Soon, there were growing tensions between Spencer and Marcus, as both were paranoid of each other. Umbrella HQ ordered the closure of the training facility in 1978, thus depriving Marcus of his 2 apprentices, Wesker and Birkin. In 1988, a team of Umbrella Security Service forces burst into his lab and assassinated him on Spencer's orders. In his last moments, he saw that his apprentices had betrayed him. What they did not see is that a queen leech would enter into him and took the T-virus inside of him, taking years to procreate his new life. Marcus' death would set a chain of events that could lead to the mass death and the fall of Umbrella. Umbrella's military and S.T.A.R.S. As the world entered the 1990s, the company would expand its own private military forces with 2 branches, the Umbrella Security Service and the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service. Both branches were comprised of men and women with impressive military backgrounds. Many of them were mercenaries with past combat experience, communist guerrillas, nationalist terrorists, etc. The Umbrella Security Service would carry out orders to extract valuable assets to the company, silence any potential moles and witnesses that could compromise the company, and destroy any evidence that could implicate the company in the case of an incident that they are responsible for. The Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service would rescue civilians in the case of an incident and extract VIPs that are important to the company. Most of the UBCS are mercenaries, hired hands. In 1996, the Raccoon City Police Department created a special force team comprised of men and women with impressive military backgrounds as well. That team will be called S.T.A.R.S and was formed as the city grew and threats of crime and domestic terrorism grew as well. Funds to create this team came from the private sector rather than local taxes. Due to their influence, Umbrella managed to choose Albert Wesker as the team's captain ahead of the more popular Enrico Marini. There were 2 teams of S.T.A.R.S known as Alpha and Bravo Team. The members of Alpha Team were Captain Albert Wesker, Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Joseph Frost, and Brad Vickers. And the members of the Bravo Team were Captain Enrico Marini, Kenneth Sullivan, Edward Dewey, Forrest Spire, Richard Aiken, and Rebecca Chambers. Becky was a genius and the youngest member of the team who graduated from the university at the age of 18 with a BSc. While not trained in combat, her role as a medic became recognized. And now, it's time for Resident Evil Zero. In the year 1998, there was a series of grisly murders occurring in the Arklay Mountains. There were reports of families and hitchhikers being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. Due to the heightened emotions of the citizens, the Raccoon City Police Department had no choice but to dispatch S.T.A.R.S to investigate these cannibalistic murders. The S.T.A.R S Bravo team was dispatched to investigate, but their chopper suffered an engine failure, forcing them to crash land safely. Rebecca enters an abandoned train to investigate, and what she gets herself into is a nightmare beyond all comprehension. The train was attacked by a swarm of leeches summoned by a mysterious man, turning the passengers into zombies. These passengers were interns that were headed to the Umbrella training facility. In the train, Rebecca encountered Billy Cohen, a disgraced U.S. Army veteran on death row, and is forced to team up with him to survive. The train would start to run and then would derail, leading them to the now zombie and monster-infested training facility. What Billy and Becky don't know is that they were being monitored by Wesker and Birkin, and by the mysterious man who was using the leeches to create copies of the deceased James Marcus. After fighting hordes of zombies and monsters, Billy and Becky encounter the mysterious man, who reveals himself to be none other than Dr. James Marcus himself. The Queen Leech then transforms into its true form after vowing revenge on the company and ultimately the entire world. Despite the odds being against them, Billy and Becky succeed in destroying the monster and escape the facility moments before its destruction. Meanwhile, as Billy and Becky were fighting off Queen Leech, Wesker was confronted by Sergei Vladimir of Umbrella's Russian division. As Wesker activated the self-destruct system of the facility, Vladimir reminded him of the consequences of his actions as they were not approved by Spencer. Wesker fought against two of Vladimir's T-103s and managed to escape of his own. Realizing that Billy is innocent, Rebecca decides to let him go as she seeks refuge in a nearby mansion to reunite with her teammates and call for help. "24 hours after losing contact with the Bravo team, S.T.A.R.S Alpha team headed to the Arklay Mountains to rescue their teammates. What they found is the derelict remains of the Bravo team's helicopter, including the mangled remains of its pilot, Kevin. As they continued to search for the other members, Alpha team was attacked by a pack of ravenous zombie dogs, killing their teammate Joseph Frost. Chris, Jill, Barry, and Wesker run away from the zombified dogs and seek refuge in the mansion. Alpha team thought the mansion was safe, but they discovered that it is infested with zombies and monsters. During their trek, they saw many members of the Bravo team dead or zombified. They will also encounter a lethal creature, Lisa Trevor. In the underground caves of the mansion, Jill discovered that Enrico Marini was still alive. Marini would tell Jill that this was all orchestrated by Umbrella, but before he could say any more, he was eliminated. With the help of Rebecca and Barry, Chris and Jill managed to enter the secret lab. The team would discover the ultimate weapon created by Umbrella, the Tyrant. Wesker revealed his plans to them, to lure S.T.A.R.S into the mansion to test their combat abilities with the BOWs and also threaten the family of Barry Burton. Wesker also planned to sell the Tyrant to one of Umbrella's biggest competitors. Before they could arrive in the chamber, Wesker injected himself with a virus provided by Birkin. The virus could put him in a state of temporary death and resurrect him with superhuman powers. Therefore, he unleashed the Tyrant and allowed it to attack him. Jill and Chris succeeded in destroying the Tyrant and managed to escape from the mansion as it exploded. They tried to expose the truth about Umbrella. Unfortunately, due to lack of evidence, the people thought their story to be bogus. Barry would send his wife and daughters to Canada, where they would be safe. Chris would go to the main headquarters of Umbrella in Europe. Jill would stay behind, and Rebecca Chambers would leave the city. It was not over. This was only the beginning.